Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. We are back, folks. Took the week off. My apologies for not having any content up in the last week. I know I did say that I was going to go and hopefully record some episodes on some streaming movies and a show I was interested in doing. But that did not work out the way I wanted it to. So we're back here talking about more films I've gone to the theater to check out and see. This week, I planned ahead. And first up, we're going to talk about the newest addition to the Marvel Studios MCU film library, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, which was released on this past Friday, the 17th of February, 2023. To get past some of the more factual bits of information about the film, as of right now, we'll go over the real divide between the audience score and the critic score on Rotten Tomatoes. On the critic side, we have 303 reviews. It's at a 47%. But the audience score, over 5,000 plus audience reviews, gives it an 84%. So the majority of the public likes the film. Now, you'll hear different pundits and critics say, what's the priority really? Is it the critic scores? Is it the Rotten Tomatoes scores? Is it the cinema score? At the end of the day, to agree with the man, all art, which includes film and movies, is subjective. At the end of the day, there's going to be people who hate it. There's going to be people who like it. There's going to be people who love it. It is what it is. The priority for me as to where I stand with stuff like this is I usually tend to side with the audience because I am an audience member. I'm not I don't know if you want to call me a certified critic or something like that. I'm not recognized in the media. I don't get to, go to screenings and things of that nature, whatever the case is. I don't have communications with movie studios and such, so I'm an audience member. I just decide to talk about movies from my point of view because I spend a lot of my free time in movie theaters and it's my go-to hobby outside of going to the gym and listening to music and watching pro wrestling for the most part. I grew up loving and reading comics and graphic novels and a huge fan of sci-fi, and it's the reason as to why I even decided to start recording stuff. So the point I'm trying to make is, I'm leaning on the audience side of the score here on Rotten Tomatoes. I believe the cinema score for the movie is a B. And I'm not sure about all of you guys out there in the world who listen to my podcast. We're from many different backgrounds and many different countries. Yet again, I'll harp on the fact that I really look at my analytics not for the sake of how many downloads do I have and da-da-da. None of that. It's really more or less, where in the world are people really listening to me from? To see as to if they can see things from my point of view, or at least like listening to a different point of view from their own in a manner that's not necessarily combative or trying to hit you over the head with something that is not conducive and or, for lack of a better term, democratic, right? So, with all that being said, I liked the movie. Why did I like the movie? I stated it before. I am a huge fan of science fiction. I am a lover of most things Marvel. And I say most, not all. So when comic books and science fiction come together, I get really excited, right? Because there's always levels of science fiction in some comic book based characters. And when I read that Quantumania was going to be based in the quantum realm, this is going to be a complete special effects, CGI, volume filmed movie. And I was just waiting to see what the direction looked like, what the world looked like, what the characters looked like, the non-human and human characters. And that's what jumped off the screen to me once they got right into the quantum realm. Yes, you could notice that it was shot on the volume. The majority of the movie was shot in front of the volume. What is the volume? The volume is a piece of movie making technology in which allows movie studios and production companies to use a big, oversized screen, not necessarily a green screen, but a large screen that allows you to have like a background designed and in place, and then you can put different sets and built design things and things of that nature in front of this particular screen so that it looks like you're on location, but you're not. So it's a cheaper way to make a movie in that particular way. So with all that being said, like I said, I like the sci-fi aspect of it. The world building of it was like, it was something else, man. A lot of people from like different comments that I've read compared it to Star Wars-esque. I would say that I agree with that in the way that they designed the beings from the quantum realm, but not necessarily the aesthetic of the quantum realm. If you understand what I'm saying, not the look of the quantum realm, but more or less of the civilization of the quantum realm itself. That reminded me a lot of Star Wars, but the background itself I thought was very unique with the color palette that they chose. How many layers there are to the quantum realm. They were only they traveled through many of the layers, but they landed in one particular one, in which they found themselves to be in a conflict in. I am also falling in line with the majority of critics and fans who have seen this movie in the last 3 days. 3 to 4 days, should I say. I love what Jonathan Majors did as Kang, the Conqueror. My belief, and yes, folks, you understand. If you don't, I'll set this out straight out for you here. When you listen to any of my reviews, folks, they're all spoilery. I always drop reviews after review embargoes have been lifted. because I go see the movies when we all see the movies. Like I said, I don't get press screenings and I don't get invited to these screenings that happen like a week or two before. Like, that's a real rare occasion. And I still have to pay for it anyways. So, yeah. The majority of my reviews are full of spoilers. If you haven't watched the film, leave now. And if you just want to know about the film and you don't plan on watching it anyways, and you just want some basic information about it, sit your ass down and listen to what I have to say for a bit and see if it's something that you like it or you don't like it. So anyways, good aesthetic to the world. I love the different creature and character designs. You still got the Ant-Man levity in the movie, even though this is more of a serious film, because through different outlets, the director, Peyton, he came out and said that he no longer wanted the Ant-Man film to be a palate cleanser and just the butt of the joke. He wanted it to be an Avengers level type film, at least in the sense of the seriousness of the film. And for me, with the combination of the situation, the villain himself, and the depth to the history between the villain and everybody involved in the Ant-Man and the Wasp family, I think they did that. They were able to really convey the seriousness of the matter. Now, for some, they're going to say, oh man, didn't you see the way that, Kang got beat by the ants? Chill out. Let's be real here. This is the Marvel Cinematic Universe. No one is really dead. And if you don't get that by now, and if your continuous complaints about comic book movies are about how there's no real consequences and there are no finite deaths, you're barking up the wrong tree. Comic books themselves have this. Plenty of characters over the decades have died and come back. The movies are just doing the same thing the comics are doing. The main difference between the MCU films and the Marvel comics themselves is how the particular stories are adapted. So, with all that being said, love Jonathan Majors. Did a great job as Kang. I thought he was ferocious. I thought he had this real underlying, like, we don't know just how powerful this being is. Like, we only scratch the surface. Like, yeah, we understand we're in the multiverse saga. If you don't understand that, if you don't follow Marvel that closely, or understand that there's phases to the releases of the movie, I cannot help you in that regard. But at the same time, I'm not going to tell you go back and watch the 30 films that have been out before, because what Phase 4 has been doing so far, now into Phase 5, these movies are very individual, even though there is still a through line and a connecting thread through most of these movies, not just due to the simple fact that they're all Marvel characters, but some folks have to see the forest beyond the trees. And I won't necessarily break it down here, because I think we have to get into Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 in order to get an even more clearer picture. But we have not seen the depth of the power of Kang the Conqueror. It is my belief, this is my theory, at the end of the movie, when he gets attacked by the ants and then he gets eaten up by that orb of his, he ain't dead, folks. This man literally conquered time in the comic books. He was just shrunk to an infinite subatomic size. He will find his way back. There's a reason as to why he was the exiled one. I believe he has genius level intellect based on comic book iterations. So I feel like if they give him that particular level of intellect in the movies, we'll see him back within the next couple of years. But at the same time, we'll see different iterations of his characters from other universes. The mid-credit and end-credit scenes in this movie already gave you that. And if you weren't introduced to him or if you weren't introduced to the other iterations of Kang in the mid-credit scenes and the end-credit scenes, you were introduced to him towards the tail end of the Loki series on Disney+. That is another version of Kang, He Who Remains. I'm not going to try to jump end-to-end tale here. The whole premise of me talking this out is because I didn't think the movie was bad, but it wasn't great either. There were some plot holes. A couple of characters were marginalized in the movie. The Wasp, Hank Pym, to a degree, because I think that he ended up being pivotal towards the tail end of the movie, and towards the beginning of the movie as well. Front and center were Paul Rudd and his daughter in this particular film. Evangeline Lilly as the Wasp, she didn't really get much depth in her dialogue, even though visually you saw her for the majority of the movie. Michelle Pfeiffer was amazing, I thought. She did a great job. She was also one of the mains throughout the story. So the movie and the story definitely moved along a little further into the explanation of incursions happened here. So we touched incursions in Loki, Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness, and now here in Quantumania. So that's a through line there within itself. Obviously, Ant-Man being a concurrent character throughout the Marvel Universe and all of its phases. Now, starting Phase 5, he's going to be a through line with the other upcoming movies as well. So that's another connecting factor here. And also, the elephant in the room that I think people are harping on a bit. And it's like, well, they're not really touching on the other stuff that's happened in the other movies. Like, again, my theory, my thoughts, and other people share this thought as well. The main reason we don't hear in other movies responding to what's transpired in other movies is because all these individual movies are happening in different universes. I know it's an out there theory. I know it's very broad, and it's like, oh my God, the multiverse saga. This is really messing up everything that we had based on the first 3 phases. Folks, Marvel Comics is an amalgamation of different worlds, different universes, different types of heroes and villains across many different spectrums. This was going to get convoluted. This is going to get a bit confusing. This might be a little bit overwhelming. If you didn't expect that, or you didn't know what you were getting into, I'm letting you know now, this is going to get even crazier. You're saying to yourselves, oh, but the story is so hard to follow for some. Well, I'll tell you this. You might be absolutely right. But at the same time, it doesn't make it any less fun. Because both things can be true. Just enjoy the movies for what they are. And for Ant-Man and the Wasp, I had a lot of fun with it. Good laughs. Excellent visual effects. Good performances by the majority of the cast. I thought it moved the overarching story about time not being linear, understanding the vastness of the multiverse, and understanding just how different iterations of the same quote-unquote character can be from one universe to the next. So keep those things in mind and keep an open mind, because we're going completely cosmic now. This is no longer earthbound conflicts. These are conflicts based in space, the cosmos, time, dimensions, you name it. It's no longer street level BS that we got introduced to 10 years ago. You know? Not to call it BS, but y'all understand what I'm saying. I thought that the movie wasn't so thought-provoking, but most Marvel movies aren't. But I feel like with what they intended to do, which was introduce us to Kang the Conqueror, they did a great job there. They left a ton of stuff in the air. Some would say, oh man, I was hoping they would tie up some loose ends. You can't create a Marvel Cinematic Universe, which has been planned for the next 8 to 10 years, if you tie up loose ends a lot of the time. There's no real finite way of doing that. And you can see that, and it's reflected in the comics. You know, because stuff always starts over. So the starting over phase, we haven't even really gotten there yet, because we've been introduced to new villains and new heroes, but like we haven't tied up the original set of the Avengers yet. Ant-Man's still alive, Thor's still out there, Hulk's still out there, right? So those characters still being out there, those loose ends can't be tied up. But now there is even more balls in the air due to all the new movies, all the new happenings, and everything else in between. I get it, folks. I get it. It's a lot. But one step at a time. You get your comedy here. You get some kick-ass sci-fi stuff. If you're not into sci-fi, this ain't for you. Like I said, the storyline itself, it's not convoluted in Ant-Man and the Wasp. It could be convoluted with other movies. Before and maybe after. We'll see. The only other thing that I would have to say is the mid-credit scene. To go back to that. That particular scene sets up the future of Kang Dynasty, which is an Avengers level movie that'll be out in about probably 2026 at this point. And then the end credit scene is a setup for Loki season 2. That's the way that I viewed it. So we're going to get plenty of Jonathan Majors in the next couple of years in the MCU. So look forward to that. I'm sure there'll be another Ant-Man movie, because Ant-Man did do something that he felt guilty for towards the end of the movie. Might be that Ant-Man started a snowball effect for the impending doom of the entire multiverse. So we'll see how that works out in the next couple of years. Which is why I like the movie as much. It still has a lot of a setup, being that this is the start of Phase 5, and going into the rest of Phase 5 and then into Phase 6. We're going to see a lot more things develop there, just based on what just happened in Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. We'll see more of Scott Lang, Hank Pym, and the other characters of the Ant-Man family. Hopefully in Part 4, we get the homies back in the film, Luis, and the characters that David Dastmalchian and T.I. play, even though David Dastmalchian voiced a character in Quantumania. Hopefully we'll get him back on screen for Ant-Man Part 4. And hopefully the film does well from a box office standpoint to get that Part 4 going. So yeah, folks, that's my overall review of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. I liked it. Wasn't the best Marvel film. I went with my boys that I usually go to all the comic book and tentpole movies with. One of my boys, Paul, thought it was the worst of all the Marvel movies ever watched. Me and my boy Rob respectfully disagreed, because Iron Man 3 exists. Thor: The Dark World exists. For whatever reason, I don't agree with the majority of the MCU space and fans that say that Avengers: Age of Ultron has aged well. I don't think so. And also, I click Black Widow onto that worst of Marvel list as well. Not my cup of tea. Thor Ragnarok is on there for me. I understand people need levity and comedy in some of their movies. I believe that Thor Ragnarok and Thor Love and Thunder completely undermined and killed the seriousness of the powers and the scope of who Thor is as a hero. So that's my take on that. To bring it back to the Quantumania thing, some of you guys might say, well, they undermined Kang. Did they? Think about it, folks. Think about it. The version of Kang that was exiled was, quote unquote, defeated by ants, quote unquote. The other versions of Kang believe that he is dead. If we're walking into a movie a couple of years from now called Kang Dynasty, do you really believe that that version of Kang is dead? Nah. Absolutely not. That's just a theory, though. It's just a theory. And they didn't undermine him because, like I said, they only scratched the surface with his powers. The way that the character design, the suit design, that's another thing to talk about. The costuming in this movie was off the chain. Top notch. Big ups to Marvel on that. Sound design, usual Marvel stuff. Nothing out of the ordinary, I would say. The score didn't help the movie as much, I thought. But that's just a critique on that end. But more MCU coming your way this year in 2023. As I spoke before, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 will be out in May. The Marvels has now been delayed until November. So from the movie front, we'll get that. Loki Season 2 and Secret Invasion, I believe, will probably be the only 2 shows to be released this year on Disney+. I think everything else is getting delayed due to the mandate that Kevin Feige just got from Bob Iger to slow down the amount of Marvel productions because they just hit us with too much. And the complaint of comic book movie fatigue, it's real, folks. Everybody wants to say, but if the movies were good and the writing was good, quality over quantity, folks, right? When you start to do too much, your quality starts to wane. It has nothing to do with fatigue, per se. We're just being over inundated with comic book related stuff. Slow it down. Get the quality back up. Get some better writers in there. Start tying up these holes. And bring that magic back to the MCU. Because for right now, for a lot of folks, and I hear the complaints, I read them a lot, MCU's lost its magic. But I think with this movie, being that it left so much in the air, like I said before, the magic isn't completely gone. Hopefully Guardians, even though I think it's going to be a gut punch from an emotional standpoint, will take us into another stratosphere. But anyways, folks, my bad. I started to wrap this up like about 10 minutes ago, but I'm done. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. This has been your friendly neighborhood moviegoer, John L. And until next time, folks, I got another review coming of another movie. Stay tuned for that, because it's going to be the first time I really lay into a movie. And I'm disappointed in having to say that. But until next time, folks, I appreciate y'all for always listening and being part of the YFNMG community. I'll stay on top of things, and I will post regularly as I was before. Let's stay here at the movies for now. Take care of yourselves. Be well. Stay safe out there. Later, folks.